Avy Meyers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, and somebody you've seen before in a different role, who is here today as a lawyer and good member of the community. And I'm going to let him tell you what he'd like to speak about today. But we've talked about a number of different things. He's somebody who is involved in the community, somebody who I, frankly, wouldn't have minded seeing run for alderman at all last time around, and I wasn't the only one who felt that way. But in any event, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Ari Kirshner. Ari, how you doing?
I'm well, Avi. Thank you so much for having me again.
First of all, my pleasure. So what is our topic du jour?
Our topic du jour is an interesting one. Avi and I, for some time, have been discussing hosting a legal segment on the show. And months ago, we thought that perhaps the Rahm Emanuel candidacy issue would be one that would be interesting. Of course, time has passed. He's since been our mayor for today as 100 days. And we've decided to highlight another issue that's come to task. So the legal issue that we're going to discuss today is First Amendment rights, right, and defamation as it relates to public figures on a local government level, as well as local journalists. What are the rules that govern journalists like yourself? What can you and can't you do? And under what grounds can a politician perhaps block or prevent you from expressing your opinion about them in an election season? So, not that we know anyone that's ever been threatened with something like that, but let's jump back a few months. Before the February 2nd election, Avi always puts out a political and aldermanic election guide. And in the first edition of that guide, he highlighted the mayoral race, treasurer, 11 aldermanic races, one of them in the most important, at least the most focused on in the paper, being the 50th race. Highlighted some ward committeeman history, Naisi Dollar, Greg Brewer, Ahmed Khan, Mike Moses, and then got to Debra Silverstein and made comments and expressed his opinions about her and her platform and his personal observations about her. And you discussed a little bit, about your personal relationship with her. Moved on to Bernard Stone, and ultimately, at the conclusion of that piece, endorsed former Alderman Stone. Sometime between then and the runoff election, Avi received a letter from an attorney representing the Silversteins, indicating that the letter was one that we call a notice of representation, kind of a threat to sue letter. You published certain things about Debra Silverstein. We believe they're defamatory. Please retract them, or else we may pursue further legal avenues. The next day, you fired a letter back to him. Thank you very much for your letter. Everything that I've indicated and expressed is my own opinions based on my research and personal observations. I do not intend to retract any of the statements. And if you do proceed with this lawsuit, I will explore legal avenues available to me for your filing a frivolous lawsuit. And you actually hit on a note there, because there's a Supreme Court rule, Rule 137, which is the sanctions rule, which prohibits an attorney from filing a court pleading not done in good faith or without reasonable legal or factual basis. So you were onto something there without exactly hitting the rule on the head. That particular exchange caught the attention of an individual, Mark Schipper, is that his?
Yeah.
How you pronounce his name? Who wrote an article about it, who actually...
The News Star.
I wasn't, and I unfortunately don't have the date for that one because it wasn't on the piece, on the PDF that I had. He quoted Rich Miller of Capital Facts, and keep that name in the back of your mind because he actually comes up in one of the later cases that we're going to discuss, that saying that, kind of highlighting the exchange between you and the Silverstein's attorney, and quoting you saying that Jewish Chicago is, and this is the quote, "my honest opinion based on years of interviews, observations, and experience. I gave a truthful observation based on my opinion." All right, opinion being the key word there. That's something that you want to keep in mind. Ultimately, you then printed a special edition for the aldermanic runoff, Debra Silverstein versus Bernard Stone. You endorsed Alderman Stone at the time. Push came, election season is over, the tallies are in. Debra Silverstein won the election. So the question at hand is, would Avi be liable for defamation spoken against Debra Silverstein that he had published in the two newsletters and newspapers prior to the election? Right? So that's the legal question at hand. Before we answer that question, we have to kind of understand what is defamation, right? It's a term that people throw around loosely. it's very easy to throw around, but legally, what does it mean, right? So defamation is defined as follows. Defamation is a statement that tends to harm a person's reputation to the extent that it lowers that person in the eyes of the community or deters others from associating with that associating with that person. So it's a statement that makes a person, ruins the reputation, right? You speak ill of another, and other people then believe that statement and no longer associate with that individual. So taking that on its face, there are lots of statements that would be defamatory. I mean, think of the amount of times that individuals, reporters, or regular people comment about another person, say something negative that would theoretically lower that person in the eyes of their community or family members or friends. But that's the broad definition, right? It's something that ruins and harms a person's reputation. And defamation split up into libel and slander. Slander being being spoken. Defamation and libel being written. The expression "the pen is mightier than the sword."
Right.
Right. So that's where it comes from. There used to be a distinction between the two, and there no longer is one. So defamation not only does that, but it's broken down into further elements, right? The first element is that there has to be a false statement, right? Truth is a defense to defamation. There has to be a statement about the plaintiff or the person that brings the lawsuit. There has to be a publication of that statement. So it has to be broadcast to other individuals through various media, and the plaintiff has to suffer damages, right? So what is a false statement, right? The statement has to be false in order for it to actually constitute defamation. So words are false within the definition of defamation if they're capable of being proven false. And what that means is opinions are protected, factual statements are not. If you express your opinion about another person, that opinion is up in the air. It can't be proven true necessarily. It can't be proven false. It's your own personal opinion.
A little over a minute.
Oh, all right. So let's jump to the end of it. Long story short, here in Illinois, without more time on the clock, what is the state of the law as it applies to individuals like Avy in speaking defamation? So there are 3 cases, not going to jump through the fact patterns, but the law is as such. A public figure, if a person is a public figure and they run for office, their ability and history and capability of performing in that office is subject to public debate, right? They put themselves in the limelight and they expect others to comment about their ability to perform. Not only that, but in the case involving Richard Miller, they state about him that a statement made in a literary context of a regularly featured column by a journalist who regularly expresses his opinions on a wide range of public and social issues is protected, right? Last I checked, the guy to my right is somebody that fits that definition. And finally, if a person runs for office, they put their character, their character is then an issue. So far as it relates to their fitness and qualifications for office, therefore their conduct and actions are fair game for comment. So long story short, what you said and the opinions that you expressed would be constitutionally protected under the First Amendment, both under Illinois common law and there's United States Supreme Court case of the New York Times versus,
hooray for the First Amendment, but at this point, Ari, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Avy.
And thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll get you back on the air. We'll talk more.
We'll finish this one.
Bye-bye.